The head of Israel's National Security Council said the country expects another 7 months of fighting in Gaza to achieve the claimed objective of destroying Hamas. Joining me now to discuss his recent visit to Israel is National Religious Broadcasters President and CEO, Troy Miller. Troy, welcome back, friend.
Hey, good to be with you again. Thank you.
I'm really glad to hear that you were able to make it to Israel and safely return. It's one of my goals for, I'd say, the next 24 months. I'm trying to figure out when I can join a trip to go to the Holy Land. I was reading some stories yesterday, and I was so glad to see that you would be joining me because there's a lot of information that's coming out now about the status of Hamas and their fighters. Over 50% of them have been killed by the IDF. What did you see when you were there?
Yeah, so we had a chance to go down next to the Gaza Strip again on our first day there. And most of the fighting has moved to the south, focusing in on Rafah. There was a little bit of hot spots up north the day we were there. We actually had a couple of rocket attacks. But as far as we know, and with the folks that we met with, the fighting really is concentrated to the south now. And the briefings that we got, they really think there are just 3 or 4 brigades left in Hamas, and Israel has really put a damper on their ability to attack in the future.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting. The IDF has unfortunately lost 300 soldiers during the war since October 7th, but Hamas, their casualties are estimated between 9 and 16,000. There were about 25,000 Hamas fighters in Gaza before October 7th. So they're now no longer directly confronting IDF soldiers when they go in and try to explore the tunnels or the different things that they're doing to try to move the war to completion. Now Hamas is taken to only executing ambushes because apparently they don't have enough people or infrastructure to take on the IDF in a head-to-head confrontation. That's an excellent development, but they're still talking about 7 more months. The international pressure has been extreme, the propaganda also extreme. Troy, talk to us about what you think will happen next.
Well, yeah, and Hamas is still, employing their tactic to use human shields and to operate out of places where civilians are, and that's been a big problem, big issue for Israel. It's really slowed down the operation. But I really think Israel's resolve. The one thing that we heard from people pretty much across the board there is the support for Israel to finish this operation and to finally put Hamas out of business. Is at least what we saw and heard there was very strong from the population, those in the government, and pretty much all the NGOs that we met. There's really one solution for Israel, and that's to make sure that Hamas can never do another October 7th.
Yeah, and I think the lack of focus on the return of the hostages is what disturbs me the most. There are 2 small children, a baby of 6 months old on October 7th, and then a little boy who is just over a year old. And those 2 children, their siblings, they were taken on October 7th, and we've not gotten any updates internationally on their status from Hamas. In fact, Hamas has said, Troy, that they don't think they could gather 40 people together for a ceasefire trade. So it's a dire circumstance, and the Israelis are now finding dead hostages as they move further south into the country. When do you think there'll be maybe an international push to actually discuss, because that's the reason why the idea is there, the hostages?
Well, look, if the United States and European Union and other nations would have kept the pressure up on Hamas, I believe we would have had the majority of those hostages, if not all of them, home by now. The fact that the U.S. and the world continues to look at Israel as Israel's the blame for this, and really you don't hear anybody talking about the hostages except Israel. Israel has tried to pursue several avenues for hostage releases. You said Hamas, I think, is unwilling. They know this is their one bargaining chip to maybe save what's left of their organization. But I really put this on the blame, and mostly on the blame of the administration here for abandoning those, including 4 Americans that are still being held.
4 Americans. I mean, it's almost as if they're not there because, Troy, we never hear about them.
Oh.
All I hear is about the Palestinian children, the Palestinian deaths, the bombed out nature of Gaza, and how the IDF, especially Bibi Netanyahu, PM there, that he actually wants to continue the war to save his political career, which is ludicrous.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. And that's again, that's an American Western propaganda. That's not the feeling across Israel. Israel is really, I think, united in their resolve to end this so this doesn't happen again. They do not want a repeat of October 7th. And we forget that right now, while Israel is hopefully closing in on finishing off Hamas, you still have Hezbollah. We were up in Samaria, and you still have Hezbollah up on the Lebanese border up there, bombing almost every day, firing rockets into Israeli villages across that whole Samaria Galilean area up there. So there's a lot going on. And again, I put it on the American administration to not put the pressure on Hamas. Their top leaders are not in Gaza. They're in Qatar and Turkey and other places. And we should be putting pressure on them to end this war and to get the hostages home. I think if we'd have kept that resolve, we might have this finished already.
Yeah, we would have much further progress in getting hostages back, certainly. I think the mission to destroy Hamas, because it's just a proxy for Iranian terroristic interests, the mission to destroy them is a lofty one, but it is one that the Israelis cannot actually back down on, because if they leave a functioning Hamas hierarchy there with enough soldiers to implement their reign of terror, there is only future October 7th. They actually have said October 7th was just the first foray, that they would like to do it again and again and again until the entire nation state of Israel experiences what the border towns experienced on that day. I mean, with that kind of a statement against Israel's interests, there's no way they can stop the war at this point, which is why we need to have a different president in November of this year. I wanted to ask you a little bit about where you see that going. We have such a strained relationship between Bibi Netanyahu and President Biden. Do you think he'll pivot on that before the election to try to get back some of his constituents in the Jewish community?
Well, I would hope he would. But look, this administration has shown over and over again that the only people they listen to is the far left extremists in their party. And that's who they're pandering to now. So I think with the funding they're trying to get and with the direction they're getting, they try to pivot on the border, and the far left really came vocal out, and they sort of back down on that as well. So I really don't see them supporting Israel between now and the end of the war, because I think it's too damaging for them on their major donors who are extremists on the left.
Yeah, but then that leaves Jewish Americans who have traditionally been Democrats with kind of no home unless they're willing to come to the GOP side. And there's a possibility with the lawfare being executed against Trump, a lot of people are rethinking their political allegiances.
Well, also in the anti-Semitism that's gone on across college campuses and around the country, with little to no response, from the administration, just kind of lip service response from them, that's not going unnoticed in the Jewish community. I heard that over and over, meeting with people in Israel, even on my plane flying back with Jewish folks that live in New York City, talking about, they would say, look, I'm liberal, I'm progressive, I've been that way my whole life, but my party has abandoned me. I can't believe that we're dealing with this now after all of these years, and I'm dealing with it from the people I thought were on my side. And that message is resonating loud and clear in the Jewish community. And I think unless the administration pivots, that message is going to come out loud and clear in November.
Yeah, I think so I agree with you 100%. And as you're talking about your time there in Israel, is there anything else you can share with us that would give us insight into the mood there, how people are living their everyday lives under a wartime footing? It's just been such a tough situation for them.
It has been a tough situation. There's over 100. We met with the Ministry of Tourism, who's in charge of actually the displacement of Israeli citizens out of their villages and communities and getting them relocated around the country. And he told us there's over 100,000 Israelis now from both the Samaria and Judea area, as well as those who still haven't moved back down into southern Israel next to the Gaza war, scattered throughout all of Israel. But Israel, the people, their resolve is firm and solid. I've never seen so much support for an administration and for a government and for a cause than I've seen in Israel. But they really do feel alone. And I think those of us in the evangelical community, one thing we try to communicate to them is you're not alone. We have thousands of churches praying for you, praying for Israel. We have people that are helping to support. They're bringing supplies. And I think they're really understanding that.
I'm so glad you said that, Troy, and I'm so glad you conveyed that to them because there really are millions of Americans who support Israel. We don't control media channels, on CNN, MSNBC. We don't have spaces there to tell the truth. But all over the country, polling shows 80% of Americans from all age groups. It's a little lower percentage in the younger age groups, but in totality, 80% of Americans support Israel. And we need to make sure that they know that because it can't be easy for them to fight a war and to see the Biden administration speaking out against them instead of supporting them in their efforts to secure their country.
That's exactly right. So I just encourage people, if you're near or in a Jewish community, let them know that you support them. Let them know that you're standing by them and that you're praying for them. They really need, that's the thing they need to hear the most from us right now, is to know they're not alone.
I think we will be very encouraged to do that. I always love to tell people, full disclosure, I am a member of National Religious Broadcasters, and we love the conference this year. I can't wait to talk to you about more here. And please do come right back to us if you're back in Israel or for any of your major breaking news stories at NRB. It's nrb.org. That's the website, and you can find out more about National Religious Broadcasters. Troy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's Troy Miller, NRB President and CEO.